Ronnie, I appreciate you sharing all of your information about your business today. I think it's always interesting when our audience gets to hear different sides of the industry and they get to. I always imagine this 21-year-old out there going, "What am I going to do with my life? I'm working in this area. I'm doing this thing. I don't know what to do with it." And then they hear a story like yours, and they're like everything leads to something if I invest myself into it.
Yeah, my dad was like this. He came from a really well, he came from a small town out there in Colorado, and they were really poor. Of course, everybody has those kind of stories, but he moved to Colorado to California with his brothers to find new opportunities. He was only 15 and he got to work for you been to LA by any chance?
Few times.
You know that dealership with Felix the cat on there?
Yeah, down
Yeah,
by USC.
yeah. He used to work there as he started out as a mechanic. And then his brother, my uncle Alex, he goes, "Hey, Continental Airlines has a couple of positions open." And then he went after that. He got his then they sent him to aircraft mechanic school. So my short story, well, then he transitioned, then he got to drive a he got to pull like DC-10s and 747s,
Oh,
to the
neat.
Skyjets, and so
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, this is great," and someone made the comment of, "This is kinda like driving a Caterpillar," and so he goes, "Oh, really?" Well, funny story is that my mom was working for a mortgage banking service company, and somebody asked, can someone take down a shed?" And my dad said, "I could do it." Rented a little skip loader, took it down, and that was the spawn of his new company, and he took all this
Good.
that he learned along the way, and he opened up a company called Interstate Field Services. And by the time he passed away, he had over 200 employees with several
Jeez.
and this is a guy that never went to college.
Right.
He
Right.
barely graduated high school, but he said, if you take all the tools, you can make a really good living out of it. And if you go to school, like my mom went to school, she went to college for business administration. Let's see, you could go to school and learn all of it, but there's nothing like working up to it and understanding firsthand how it goes.
I
Like I
think
went
that's so valuable.
like I went to school to be a transportation designer. I should be a car designer,
Yeah.
but things transition along where now I am. Here I am. I still doing design, but a whole different in the show world, live event industry.
Yeah. That's the coolest part of it is like you don't know really where it goes. I tease my daughter all the time. She's a pharmacist, but she loved making her centerpieces for her wedding. So I
Well,
call her I call her a florist. And she looks at me with such disdain. Like, I can't believe it, Dad. I've invested my whole life into this. Why do you keep saying that? Because we could make our dreams and passion a reality. And I think the difference in thought is not considering your hobbies a non-revenue generating idea. And I think most of us take our hobbies or our interests and we eliminate them as not being a revenue generating idea. And we're focused on this thing that we think creates money, but we've created that. And we've taken this element out that I love to highlight. Like your dad had all of these ideas that came to him and he took the steps, but what was it that gave him the ideas? That's where I love to focus. I believe there is this light that follows us around and it supports us if we're supporting it. And as long as there's this mutual agreement of flow where we're working into it and we're establishing it, it leads us along the way. And if we're open eared to listen and take those steps, that's where the real magic starts. And most of us won't believe that that's a truth. We've been conditioned in a way not to see that as an opportunity. But I heard a story just a couple months ago and it was amazing. The company actually sets up these huge floral designs in like malls and things. Their parent company is Terminix and different companies like that. But that parent company is actually a company out of Europe that started in pest control, two people in pest control.
yeah.
And when they were out starting their company, they weren't like, we're going to be a conglomerate and buy Terminix in the US. And it wasn't that decision process for them. They got into the business, they gave it their best, they worked within the parameters that they were given, but they saw their value not being defined by education, pre-designed education, or this ideal that they didn't fit into a certain category that would be successful. They just followed that light, they invested into it, and look at where it took them. I think and you've done the same thing with your life, Ronnie. That's exactly why I love listening to your story.
The part that was kind of like the idea behind leaving Legends or ASM, whatever they want to call themselves these days, is the quality of time with family. Let's see, that's one thing my dad and my mom instilled with me is that you could get a job tomorrow. You can make as much money as you want, but you could never replace moments with your family
True.
or with loved ones.
Yeah.
That you can never, ever, ever buy that. Yeah, you could get the next whatever car that you want,
Hmm.
or you could get the house, or if it burns down, well, you could get another house, but you
Yeah.
can never get those moments back.
Do you think what's interesting to me is that when our younger years, we're so motivated on creating that we kind of leave that aside. At least I left it aside. Even though I was raising a family,
Likewise.
I was always like, my job is to provide and create a stable base. And that gave me an excuse in my mind not to invest myself sometimes in family. I just throw money at it or whatever it was. And I had to come to grips in this world that I live in now that that balance is essential. It's the whole reason for it. And sometimes finding balance in family creates better outcomes in business. You're just
Yeah.
holistically in a place where you feel good about what you're doing and you're really invested into yourself every day. And so those of you out there that are really working hard on building a business, realize like what you're doing behind that computer screen or in your day-to-day efforts, that has no relevance to anything else in your life except for that's the game you like to play. If you can allow the rest of this to also be a part of it, you create this holistic lifestyle that moves from what I would call a lifestyle to a quality of life. And then you realize like you're shining this huge light over this presence in front of you and you're just following that light and revenue follows that light. And that's the beautiful part. Back in the day, we were just shining a flashlight and leaving family out of the picture and leaving all these things out of the picture. And we were so focused on this ideal, but we forgot the fact that the rest of that really was the whole experience. And once you start getting that energy moving that direction holistically, revenue follows. It generates, really feeds it rather than you chasing revenue.
Yeah. And my long-term goal is when we get a, really robust staff is to keep that work-life balance, create opportunities because once you basically put people into boxes and they only think so far in that box and they're not willing to go outside of that. And I'm looking at the corporate structure of various ones. They like to put people into boxes. There's a reason for it, but it limits creativity.
It
What I
does.
discovered.
It does, and you're so right. When I was on the hotel side, my last team, I created an empowerment profile or structure within them where they could grow into their own empowerment and see opportunity for promotion and explore different ways of doing the business. Where you're right, before that, it's kind of a box set. This is what you do, or you go out and look for that other job to do that. And I think that that one technique that you're taking into your team and into your leadership, it really sets you apart from a lot of business owners because that's the new world. If you're able to see your team through their eyes and realize you're gonna give them that same advantage that you got that one day where they threw you in that room and said, all right, figure out AutoCAD, man. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
And look at where you are now. I mean, that's just, to me, it's spectacular.
One thing I want to leave with is Dick Schaff. He used to be the president of IAAM, IVAM, all the industry, bunch of industry, and then also the VP of SMG and ASM, all those companies. So the one thing he would do is say, "I am not better than the housekeeping person, nor this person, or everybody sits on the same line." The part that kind of resonates or brought that home for me is one time I was working an event and I went into one of the bathrooms to wash my hands. And I heard rustling going on in one of the stalls, and it turns out to be Dick Schaff cleaning a toilet because housekeeping needed a hand. He was
Mm,
still in a suit. All he his had like one of those overall bed, whatever those things were, just to keep from stuff splashing on him. And I asked him like, "What are you doing?" And it was one of the few times him and I talked. He goes, "Housekeeping needed help." He goes, "I just grabbed a cart and went."
wow.
That kind of
Servant leadership.
Yeah, that kind of leadership. And Bob Sauter, same way. No, one time we had to flip a room, and Bob Sauter, who was just recent turned to the GM after Dick Schaff passed away. He was out there flipping tables and not even, and then also emptying out trash cans, running the dumpster, and not even thinking like going, somebody else below me could do this.
Right.
Yeah,
No, it's just part of the equation, and they don't see it any differently, and I think that's the healthiest way to look at it. Well, I'm
yeah,
proud to know you, my friend. I look forward to seeing how everything grows around us, and I'd love to have you back on next year and give us a market update on how your installation in Lisbon's going.
yeah. We'll see how things go, and hopefully we're hanging out in Lisbon, and we could do the this over there, and
I'm in that.
Couple
Let's
drinks
do
while we're
that. Yeah, let's do that, brother. All right, man. Take care. We'll talk